लाइफ में लेना देना तो चलता रहता है। इधर फ्लेक्सी लोन से बोरो कर लिया और उधर बाय मॉम डैड का वेकेशन डन। शादी का डिसीजन लिया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से और बोरो किया। प्रमोशन मिला तो ये लो थोड़ा लोन वापस कर दिया, थैंक यू। नए इंटीरियर्स का डील किया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से फिर थोड़ा ले लिया। ईयर एंड बोनस मिला तो इस बार लोन ज्यादा वापस कर दिया। लाइफ में लेना देना चलता रहेगा तो लोन्स में क्यों नहीं। इसीलिए फ्लेक्सी लोन फ्रॉम बजाज फिनसर्व एक ऐसा लोन जो जब चाहे बोरो करे, जैसे चाहे रीपे करे, वो भी चुटकी में। थिंक इट डन विद बजाज फिनसर्व।
हेलो, हर सीजन के लिए नए इंटीरियर्स?
हाँ, वो भी हर रूम के लिए।
फ्रिज, स्मार्टफोन या बड़ा टीवी?
तीनों क्यों नहीं?
अरे ये तो शॉपिंग लिस्ट में नहीं था।
सो अब शॉपिंग कार्ट में तो है। सॉरी।
अच्छा, नए आउटफिट्स की विश लिस्ट।
विश क्यों? Just add to cart and buy।
तो ये सब EMI पे?
और वो भी चुटकी में। On India's fastest growing EMI network. Think it done with Bajaj Finserv।
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट डन।
माँ के बेडरूम का एसी या लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई, लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फॉर भाई। पुणे, पटना, चेन्नई, मथुरा या फिर बेगूसराय, या फिर बेगूसराय। नए घर के लिए चाहिए 4K टीवी हाई फाई, या फिर वाइफ को चाहिए लेटेस्ट स्टाइल। EMI है ना, EMI है ना, EMI। मॉड्यूलर किचन में पुराना फ्रिज क्यों है भाई?
शादी है नहीं, मैट्रेस पुराना है भाई। अक्खा इंडिया बोले भाई प्राइजेस है हाई। बेस्ट ही खरीदना है तो अपने EMI स्टोर पर आए।
EMI है ना, EMI।
अब काशी हो या वाशी, महंगा लगे तो EMI और बेस्ट ही चाहिए तो भी EMI, क्योंकि बजाज फिनसर्व का EMI है ना। विजिट www.emistore.com।
EMI है ना, EMI है ना, EMI।
धोखा है धोखा, धोखा ना खाओ जी। इंश्योरेंस फ्रॉड से बचना है बहुत जरूरी जी। वो एजेंट है या फ्रॉड पता लगाओ जी। एक्स्ट्रा ऑफर के झांसे में कहीं फंस ना जाओ जी। अगर कोई अनजान कॉलर इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी डिटेल्स मांगे तो कह देना उनको मिलके स्कैम को एंड करो, हमेशा सेफ रहो जी। Always verify the caller and do not surrender your insurance for attractive offers. हमेशा सावधान रहे, safe रहे. Issued in the interest of public awareness by Bajaj Finserv. धोखा है धोखा, धोखा ना खाओ जी। जो होगा
सो होगा ऐसे ना सोचो जी। कॉल पे कोई पूछे OTP दो ना जी,
तो कह देना उनको
मिलके स्कैम को एंड करो, हमेशा सेफ रहो जी।
Being a hero is all about heart. It's not about ruling the world. It's about owning it. It's not about winning a race. It's about delivering a smile to the human race. It's about a spirit that just cannot be confined by geographies. It's about the heart that beats for the future and a soul that echoes the values of generations. And yet, being a hero is never about the hero. It's about the millions who celebrate them. Hero Motorcorp, the motorcycle leader. There's a gush of wind that hums a sweet song. There's a gush of wind that fights like a hero to fill the world with possibility. There's a gush of wind that jumps across oceans and mountains, embracing the entire planet. There's a gush of wind that blows away darkness. There's a gush of wind that blows for humanity. Because at Hero, we care.
In 1868, the Tata Group was founded on a philosophy that put the community at the heart of its existence. Today, we are a $100 billion global enterprise. Our today has been built on enduring values. Today is about delivering excellence across business sectors. Today is about building a future-ready nation. Our today has a strong foundation with community at its core. Our today is dedicated to the communities we serve. Today is always about more than just today. Our today is a continuous journey for a better tomorrow. Tata, leadership with trust.
Behold, the story of victory, of life over malady. Behold the saga of power, of science over sickness. Behold the tale of triumph, of dedication over disease. Behold the rise and rise of Cadila Pharmaceuticals Limited, one of India's largest privately held pharmaceutical companies based out of Ahmedabad, Gujarat, India. Cadila Pharmaceuticals was born out of the vision of a legend who left an indelible mark in the chronicles of Indian pharmaceuticals industry. He was Indravadan Ambalal Modi, the founder chairman of the company, rightfully christened as the Medicine Man of India. His vision to alleviate pain of the underprivileged through research-driven innovations has been driving Cadila Pharmaceuticals for more than 6 decades now. Innovations which are backed by the key strengths of the company, the state-of-the-art manufacturing and research facilities. The flagship manufacturing facility at Dholka, Gujarat, sprawls over 100 acres. This avant-garde facility is US FDA approved, besides meeting most of the stringent quality standards across the globe. It manufactures tablets, capsules, injectables, liquids, and orals. The second formulations manufacturing facility is located at Samba in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The API facilities at Ankleshwar, Gujarat, manufacture a large number of key APIs and intermediates at this US FDA and ISO 9002 and ISO 14001 accredited plant. The company also has set up its first ever overseas formulation manufacturing facility at Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. This world-class facility is the only WHO CGMP compliant manufacturing facility in the region. More than 850 products spread across 12 specialties with many of India's top brands in its basket. Great goals are defined by far-sighted vision and achieved by seamless teamwork. A multicultural, multilingual and multinational workforce of over 7,000 employees is truly the propelling power of the company. Not just in the domestic market, the company has a wide global footprint with over 1,000 marketing authorizations across 85 countries. Its international sales force of over 150 highly diversified and versatile personnel lends it an outreach that blankets the globe. As the company grows, so does its commitment to research. Manned by more than 350 scientists, the R&D facilities of Cadila Pharmaceuticals at Dholka, Gujarat is an institution of breakthrough innovations. To take the focus on innovation to the next level, it partners with leading international companies to discover newer treatments. The Cadila Pharmaceuticals Group is gigantic. Its group companies complement and expand the dynamic vision of the company across new avenues of healthcare and newer fast-paced business areas. Cadila Pharmaceuticals is a gentle giant. Decades of dedicated research, groundbreaking healthcare innovations, and worldwide impact proves the infinite potential of one powerful emotion. Care. The success of Cadila Pharmaceuticals bears testimony to the fact that the care continues.
आने वाले कल की दस्तक हमें सुनाई देती है, नई मंजिल है जिस ओर हमें वो दिशा दिखाई देती है। नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए इंडिया का नया जोश, नए जोश से निकल पड़े हम, आने वाला कल होगा हमारा। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
और नए इंडिया के सफर में टेक्नोलॉजी की शक्ति लेकर आपका भागीदार रहेगा रिलायंस। नए इंडिया का नया जोश।
लाइफ में लेना देना तो चलता रहता है। इधर फ्लेक्सी लोन से बोरो कर लिया और उधर बाय मॉम डैड का वेकेशन डन। शादी का डिसीजन लिया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से और बोरो किया। प्रमोशन मिला तो ये लो थोड़ा लोन वापस कर दिया, थैंक यू। नए इंटीरियर्स का डील किया, फ्लेक्सी लोन से फिर थोड़ा ले लिया। ईयर एंड बोनस मिला तो इस बार लोन ज्यादा वापस कर दिया। लाइफ में लेना देना चलता रहेगा तो लोन्स में क्यों नहीं। इसीलिए फ्लेक्सी लोन फ्रॉम बजाज फिनसर्व एक ऐसा लोन जो जब चाहे बोरो करे, जैसे चाहे रीपे करे, वो भी चुटकी में। थिंक इट डन विद बजाज फिनसर्व।
हेलो, हर सीजन के लिए नए इंटीरियर्स?
हाँ, वो भी हर रूम के लिए।
फ्रिज, स्मार्टफोन या बड़ा टीवी?
तीनों क्यों नहीं?
अरे ये तो शॉपिंग लिस्ट में नहीं था।
So, अब शॉपिंग कार्ट में तो है। सॉरी।
अच्छा, नए आउटफिट्स की विश लिस्ट।
विश क्यों? जस्ट ऐड टू कार्ट एंड बाय।
तो ये सब ईएमआई पे?
और वो भी चुटकी में। On India's fastest growing EMI network. Think it, done with Bajaj Finserv.
सर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। साहब, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता। हुजूर, अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान हो ही नहीं सकता।
अपनों को खुश रखना इससे आसान।
अपनों को खुशियां दिलाना आसान नहीं बनाते तो आगे कैसे बढ़ते। इसीलिए हम जो भी करते हैं उसे बेहतर बनाते आ रहे हैं, बनाते रहेंगे। बजाज फिनसर्व, थिंक इट, डन।
माँ के बेडरूम का एसी या लेटेस्ट मोबाइल फोन भाई।
Yeah, we are going live, sir. So we welcome all the participants and the delegates for the CII Partnership Summit 2021, partnering for building a new world, growth, competitiveness, sustainability, technology, and the most awaited session on net zero buildings and built environment. So now I invite Mr. V. Suresh, National Chairman of the CII Indian Green Building Council, IGBC. Mr. V. Suresh is a civil engineer from Anna University with 55 years of professional experience in housing, infrastructure, rural and urban development, real estate development, built environment sectors, leading to sustainable development. We welcome Mr. V. Suresh, who is a session moderator for the Net Zero Buildings and Built Environment. Welcome you, sir. And we have a wonderful array of panelists right from London, Singapore, Germany, and Hong Kong, and Sydney and Singapore also. So next, I welcome Mr. Matthew Black, Project Coordinator, World Green Building Council, Advancing Net Zero Project, UK. In his role, he works across the projects, across the various global and regional activities, supporting World GBC Green Building Council members across the world to advance net zero in their local context and leading on delivery and recruitment for the net zero carbon buildings commitment. We welcome Matthew Black. Now, I invite Dr. Christine Lementer, CEO of German Green Building Council, popularly known as DGNP. So from 2016 to 2020, Dr. Christine is a member of the board for the World Green Building Council and is also an advisory board in various activities. To name a few, is the Cradle to Cradle Product Innovation Institute. Dr. Christine, CEO of German Green Building Council. We are pleased to have you as a part of this wonderful panel. Now may I request Ms. Yvonne to join us. She is the Executive Director of Singapore Green Building Council, an industry organization founded on a strong public-private partnership to drive the transformation of Singapore's built environment. And she is also a good friend, similar to Jeff and Dr. Christine and Matthew Black and others, a great friend for IGBC and all its activities. Now we have our own friend, Mr. Jeff Oatman, Head of Collaboration and Membership from Green Building Council of Australia, joining us all the way from Sydney. And he heads the entire operations related to the membership of the Green Building Council of Australia. And he has also overseen certification of more than 700 Green Star projects, ranging from hospitals to hotels, school to shopping centers, office towers to large-scale community developments, size of new cities. And now we have Mr. Ashish Rageja, who is involved right from the day one of the IGBC headquarters way back in year 2001. And he is also wears many hats in IGBC, and he is a chairman for the IGBC Technical Committee, chairman for the IGBC Net Zero Energy and Net Zero Rating Programs. And he is a partner at Aeon Consultants and has a postgraduate degree in thermal engineering from IIT Delhi. And he is actively involved in all the IGBC activities ever since we started in 2001. So now may I request our National Chairman, Mr. V. Suresh, to take over and the most awaited session of the Partnership Summit on the net zero for the buildings and built environment. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Anand, for the wonderful evening greeting to everybody. And what a great pleasure to have such a distinguished array of people from all geographies, from the eastern end up to London, cutting across to bring the flavor of ideas. And that's the best way to greet, is very closely following the COP26. 130 global leaders converged in Glasgow for the COP26 to discuss main role of securing global net zero by mid-century and keeping 1.5 degree within the reach. So that was the reason where all have joined, and we are just so closely in continuation of that. This particular event is now taking place, and the larger importance of this particular thing of maintaining the 1.5 degree level, not to go more than that. We don't want sea levels to rise beyond the people. We don't want to displace millions of people outside, and also don't want any reduction in the coral reef or other related component which can otherwise have a major impact on that. And therefore, the importance of this particular thing is already known, and imperative action is already taking place all across the globe. I'm sure each one of you are going to bring your own particular value. And I'm happy that over 130 countries or 90% of world economies are now covered by the net zero pledges. Very important. In India, our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Glasgow gave the word Panchamrita, which means a fivefold strategy towards that, or towards getting to the closer to the 1.5 degrees Celsius. The fivefold strategy covered by 2030 net zero non-fossil fuel energy for 500 gigawatt, going up all the way to 100 gigawatt now in 2021, and 50% of energy requirement will be renewable by that time, and 1 billion ton of carbon footprint reduction by 2030, and 2030 carbon intensity of GDP will be less than 45%, and the larger agenda, slightly more than what many other countries did, 2070 to have net zero carbon emission. And the overall carbon emission component, we're all aware, is of the order of 53 billion, of which the construction sector and the building sector is a very, very major component there. 34.3 billion tons emitted into the atmosphere as per the IEA report. Even leaving out the carbon sinks out, the total emission is overall emitted 51 billion ton. And of course, each country has contributed in their own way. India about 2.3, EU about 2.63, USA about 4.3, and some of the other countries a little more larger in a large way. And if you take only building and construction sector alone, it's about 38% of all the carbon footprint emission of building and construction together. 9.9 billion tons comes only from the building operations, and construction activity about roughly about 0.13 billion. Emission from material manufacturing and supply chain about 3.4 billion ton. So we've got to put all our efforts into seeing, we are concentrating only on that. We are not dealing with the energy generation aspect, a much larger issue. We are not covering the transportation issue. There's still another major one. We are not covering the overall manufacturing sector. Only on the building and the construction sector, 38% is what we are addressing at this particular point of time. And we all have to work on this in a very large way. And on the World Earth Day, on April 2021, India launched the IGBC mission on net zero, which had the support of pledge simultaneously of 300 leading organizations committing to that particular pledge over there, and which we did that on a solid ground of already having launched the net zero energy rating about 4-5 years back, net zero water about 1 year back, and net zero waste, and as for the landfill rating system, and more importantly, also came up with the guiding framework for the net zero carbon principles in the recent Green Building Congress. So we have the type of requirements for the net zero energy, water, waste, and carbon in place, and trying to put it for all our projects in terms of its application there. And I'm very happy that, therefore, that we are having a wonderful discussions on this particular one. How do you achieve the net zero for the buildings and the built environment? So we are limiting it to that particular area, how to deal with that. Maybe we might require some immediate term requirement, a short-term requirement, a medium-term requirement, and a long-term requirement, 2025, 2030, and 2050. And as far as India is concerned, a 2070 goal for complete decarbonization effect to come in a large way, especially a country with about 1.4 billion population, with fossil fuel energy as a major thing for the one, with the type of commitment we are given, the level of 2070 is the most realistic way we can go about, but I'm sure we will achieve many things by 2030, and the remaining we will take it forward. Now, coming down to the distinguished panelists, I'm sure in your own geographies and in your own country, you are doing fantastic work. We are aware you're a great inspiration for everybody. So with this video, we'll have a wonderful panel discussion going forward. And what I propose to do in this particular panel discussion is to have one common question to everybody, maybe 3 minutes response from each of you. First, that one common question to all. Then I'll come back after that is over. I'll come back to some specific question to each of you, which I thought you people are doing some great work in that area, and then another 3 more minutes for responses. So each one of you panelists will get a 3 minutes general response for the first question, followed by a specific question for each one of the 3 more minutes. So 3 plus 6 minutes is a good time for all the panelists. One particular panelist, very distinguished one, is Dr. Carrie Chan, Executive Director of the Hong Kong Green Building Council. He was also Chairman of the World Green Building Council Asia Pacific Network. Incidentally, Mr. Anand is the Vice Chairman there. He could not join, but he has sent a recorded message on his own views on these aspects, which I'll do at the end of, after all 5 of you are present there, you give your viewpoint. I'll bring Carrie Chan's point of view also. Then we'll open out for a Q&A session from not only a large number of people who are streaming, which has come down to a large number of 8,000 people streaming in and seeing this particular session there all across. And we'll have a 15 minutes Q&A session where each one of you will respond to that. Then we'll come down to some concluding remarks. So that'll be a good way by which we'll be able to do a very useful session. So without taking any further ado, let me first tell what I would request each panel members is primarily to get into this area of net zero buildings and built environment. I would request each panel members to share their perspectives in their country or the region, how the building and construction sector can contribute towards meeting the net zero commitments. Very straightforward question. And how do you deal with that particularly for net zero commitments? I think to start with, I would like to request Matthew Black to kindly open out, project coordinator of the World Green Building Council, who is also advancing the net zero project in UK and all over country. Matthew, can you take over? 3 minutes.
Thank you, Suresh. Good morning, good afternoon, and evening, depending on where you're joining us from. I've already been introduced, but yeah, my name is Matthew Black, and I'm the project coordinator for advancing net zero at World GBC. And I guess the answer to your question, Suresh, is that we're approaching this from a global perspective. So how can we help the GBC network across the globe? How can we help them advance net zero in their local context through their own GBC? We do this in many ways. And I think one of the things that I wanted to say was that, advancing net zero emissions is a journey. It's an integral part of a wider systemic shift towards the built environment. And as part of this transition towards total sector decarbonisation, World GBC advocates really for a holistic approach to sustainability that enables both tangible environmental, but also social co-benefits that support the UN's SDGs overall. So sometimes it's not just purely about the emissions reductions. We have to be doing more than that. We have to be ensuring that the sustainable buildings that we are pursuing as a movement, as a network, are not only net zero, but they're also healthy. They're also improving the environment and nature where they exist. How are we doing this as well, GBC? Well, the program that I participate in, Advancing Net Zero, is crucial to this. We have 29, soon to be 30 participating green building councils in the Advancing Net Zero program. And together we're working collaboratively to increase the awareness and education of the urgency and achievability of net zero carbon buildings. We're achieving alignment and commonality between our approaches and certification schemes. And we're working together to expedite the uptake in global markets of net zero by sharing market leadership examples to really illustrate that net zero is achievable. It's achievable in lots of different examples, in country context, in project context, and it's achievable now. And finally, the one thing I want to quickly get in there is the other way that we do this is working with the GBC network in terms of recruitment for the net zero carbon buildings commitment. The commitment calls on businesses, organizations, all the way up to cities and governments themselves to take action on both operational and embodied carbon to decarbonize their assets and the wider built environment. And so by collaborating with this group of industry leaders, we're really highlighting to others what is possible now and showing this ambition loop in action. Thank you, Suresh.
Thank you, Matthew. You're done. On the dot, you have taken the time. Allow me to seek same information for the whole German Green Building Council, Dr. Christine Lemaitre, CEO of DGNB, to kindly come in, chip in and give perspectives on this question of how the building sector could contribute towards meeting the net zero commitments, and German in general, or EU also, if you'd like to embrace that. Please, Christine, next 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me. And I'm very excited about learning, what happens in other countries. Maybe from the German perspective to your big question, it's maybe a very simple answer. We have to get started. I think we see a lot of discussions. We know all the big numbers. But I think the good news is, and we launched 3 years ago an award for climate positive buildings, is that we are able to already design today and operate buildings in a climate neutral or even climate positive way. And I think there we're actually ahead of other sectors such as the mobility or energy sector, because we can build the future we need to see in 2050, 2045, the latest. We can do that already. And I think this is the key message for us, is move away from, we don't need lighthouses, we don't need leadership. What we need is we need to scale things. And I think we have the tools, we have the knowledge, and we have to get going. And I think the main attitude, especially from a German or Northern European perspective, is we have to already value what is there. When we talk about reaching the 1.5 degree scenario, we have to cut emissions today as much as we can. That means in new construction as well as in operation. And for new construction, that means, can we maybe renovate the existing buildings? Do we really need to build new? We really have to maintain the building stock. We have to understand and value the buildings we already have and start working with them, because every building we don't build new, we save a lot of emissions on the embodied carbon part, which was already mentioned already. And when it comes to operation, our philosophy and what we try to bring out to the industry is really optimize first the operational part before you start renovating a building. Because when we talk about climate goals, especially in Europe, we always talk about renovation wave and renovation rates, and that we need to have more renovation. But I think one key part is missing, especially in the political discussions. We need more transparency. We have to install monitoring on a wide scale, because which architect knows the energy consumption of the building he designed? And hardly any knows them. Sometimes the buildings owners don't have any idea. So I think a key part for us is monitor, understand what you have, start optimizing the operational carbon. You can do a lot of reduction just by that, up to 30%. We have projects who were able to achieve that. And if you really optimize everything, then you maybe can start thinking about renovation. And again, get started. I think we have the knowledge, we have the tools, and we have to stop over discussing the things and making them pseudo-scientific. Maybe it's hard to say, but I think this is the kind of attitude we need in the construction industry, because we're building and we have to do it today. So thank you very much.
Excellent. You also kept the time on the dot. Thank you very much. Very happy to hear the 2045, you said you'll be able to achieve that 5 years ahead of the 2050 itself. And not only new buildings, but also existing buildings, design constructs for the new, but also existing one, how to make that through renovation, retrofitting. And thank you so much. Right time for me to get on to Yuen So, Executive Director of Singapore Green Building Council. Many initiatives done under the Singapore Green Building Council. Ma'am, would you like to open it on the simple question, how the building sector could contribute towards meeting the net zero commitments? Please.
Yep. Thank you very much for having me here today. So maybe before I talk about, for buildings, I just want to say that net zero is actually a very challenging goal for Singapore, because we simply lack the physical ability to produce enough renewable energy to meet our needs, due to our very small geographical size, our high density, and our predominantly high-rise buildings. So solar is our only viable renewable energy option. And even with total solarization efforts, meaning if we use up all our vacant land, rooftops, building facades, and even water bodies, this will only yield enough energy to meet about 4 to 7% of Singapore's total energy needs. So, the supply of renewable energy is something we actually don't have the solution for. So therefore, we actually need to focus on the demand side of things when we talk about net zero. Right. So to do that, we are actually looking at changing things at the systems level for the built environment. So what this means is we look at buildings, our building functions, and our user needs from the district scale. And this starts with things like smart planning, how we can use digital tools, computer simulation, data analytics to better plan our towns and districts position our buildings and structures in such a way that we can enhance, better wind flow, natural ventilation, and minimize heat gain, as well as making transportation journeys more efficient. And where transportation is concerned, we want to make our towns and districts more walkable and bicycle friendly and reduce basically vehicles on the road. So I'm not sure how it is in India, but like in Singapore, e-commerce is really booming. Everyone is just buying stuff online and getting it delivered to their homes and offices. So what will happen is that in future, we will need to collect them from a centralized logistics hub.
Yes.
And the efforts on this centralization have already begun. And today we already have a network of like parcel delivery lockers when you can just go and pick up your packages 24 hours, 7 days a week at your convenience. And on the opposite side of things, when you dispose of your waste, more and more so this will be collected via a centralized waste collection system, where rubbish is like sucked through a district-wide underground pneumatic vacuum system to centralized locations where they can be collected more efficiently, rather than having the rubbish truck going around from building to building. Yeah, but perhaps I guess for us, the greatest impact to building energy efficiency is likely to come from district or centralized cooling systems, where
I'll come on a detail on when specific questions are going to come on that. But this is a fantastic high density component, a lot of things to be done, renewable, passive design, as well as active design, get into systemic approach. It's a fantastic one. You have very similar issues coming. Thank you so much for that. Let me get on to Jeff Ottman, Head of Collaboration and Membership at Green Building Council Australia. Let's hear from Jeff. What is that you'd like to see from Australian point of view on this common question? Building construction sector's contribution towards meeting net zero commitment. Jeff?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And I should start as well too by thanking you so much for inviting me and inviting the GBCA to be part of the conference. We are long-term friends and collaborators with the India GBC. So it's really great to be a part of this and to be a part of the panel. So thank you very much. When I think about net zero and in Australia and what we've been doing, it's quite interesting because in many ways, there's a lot of really great things happening, but I think a lot of people don't necessarily recognize that Australia is a country that the wealth and finance has really come off the back of natural resources, particularly coal and iron ore. And there's a huge industry there. And a lot of people don't recognize that. So it's really quite interesting listening to the comments that were made about leadership and how I think in Australia, there actually is an argument for having leadership because politically it's been seen for a while to be lagging. But I think from our perspective and where we've been working with industry, I think there's probably three very broad things that we've found with how we transition to net zero. First is around strategy and mapping out a strategy. And a couple of years ago, off of COP21, we found ourselves saying, okay, we've got this burning platform, so to speak. We have to get to net zero. What is the role that we have as a GBC and what are we meant to do? And how can we use our levers of influence to try to shift things? So we put together a climate positive roadmap, which basically mapped out all the key decisions that have to effectively get us to reaching the Paris target and the Paris Climate Agreement goals. So that was kind of high level, and that helped us really map out strategy. So having a strategy that industry could get involved with and understand was key. The next thing we do, and we spend a lot of time doing this, and it's not just because it's in my title, but we spend a lot of time in collaboration and engagement and working and speaking with members. And we've found in the past that if we don't work closely with our members and say, here is the definition for net zero, use it, it will likely be dead on arrival. And we need to spend a lot of time holding hands with members and having discussions and debates and conversations, trying to get some degree of consensus, and also bringing stakeholders that may not necessarily agree on what that looks like and getting them together to come to an agreement on what net zero looks like. So we've done that within Green Star, and we've at a very high level, we're saying that a net zero building is one that is designed to be highly energy efficient, powered by renewables, built with lower embodied upfront carbon, fully electric, and then everything else has to be offset by nature. And that's been so far very successful, and there's been a lot of support for that. I think the next really big thing is this leadership piece, and Matt already had alluded to it with the net zero building commitment. And for those that aren't familiar, it's really simple. Your buildings, net zero by 2030. We've had a lot of interest and a lot of success in getting signatories signed up to that. And that really
that's for new buildings. That's for new buildings by 2030. Okay.
Yeah, new buildings, net zero, and that includes embodied carbon. So it's a real big shift.
Okay.
That sounds like my time to stop talking, so I'll stop.
Thank you, Jeff. That's so good to hear the sort of the complete roadmap, carbon roadmap, and the collaboration component, and the strategy to deal with the low embodied energy application in a big, large way. Let's turn on to our dear colleague from India, Ashish Rakeja, Chairman of the IGBC Technical Committee, also Chairman for both the Net Zero Energy and Net Zero Water Rating. Ashish, please indicate your point of view on this question. Immediate reply.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think India has a unique challenge and opportunity ahead, considering the vast scope for urbanization that is happening here, and that is going to happen up to in years to come. I think we're going to be constructing at a furious pace, which means some of the reports which talk about is we are going to be building nearly 1 Chicago a year. That's the rate at which we are constructing.
Wow.
Now, while we are constructing, there's also a large chunk of buildings which are now getting old and will be needing an upgrade also. So there is a dual challenge, but that also gives us an opportunity while we build and while we renovate, we can get them to be done in the right direction. Now, Green Building Council in India has done a wonderful job in last 2 decades of bringing in the era of the understanding what the green rating is all about. I think that the fundamentals exist on ground now, with IGBC having a footprint of nearly 8 billion square feet. That talks volume about understanding of the people. The government has also got into the game by giving extra incentives to the developers and to the building owners so that they are going in the right direction.
Okay.
Now, what we have done in 2 decades is not going to be enough. We need to do more. And that journey towards the low carbon footprint has also begun. India also is fortunate to get a good solar footprint. We had initially a target of do 20 gigawatts by 2022, which was exceeded by double. We did by about 48 gigawatt by end of the last month itself. Our plan is to finish 100 gigawatt of solar power energy by 2022 end, which means at least one part of moving to the carbon neutrality or carbon footprint reduction is being taken care of by moving on to the renewables. So the Honorable Prime Minister, what the target he has set for 2070, I think we will be well on that target. IGBC is playing its role by launching the framework, which it has recently done, the guidance framework for GHG accounting and for doing the net zero carbon buildings, which are recently done. The government has also played the role by asking 1,000 top companies on the stock exchange to come out with the carbon footprint reduction plan and offering low interest loans for the construction that is taking place. So there is a movement which is there. I think it's a question of how fast we are able to now
we can work on
adopt on it. So that's
Thank you, Ashish. That's very interesting. Not only the information that you said, 1 Chicago a year is quite a large work. I can understand. We got to, with the population increase going to 1.6 billion from what we are, 1.35. You need to build as much required in the next about 2 to 3 decades. Thank you so much. Now coming down to specific queries, now that everybody has given to that one question, common question, but replies from different shades of responses come, very useful one. So I'd like to now get on to specific questions to be asked. 2 questions I have for each of you, but I think what I'll ask both the questions together instead of doing it twice there. First one is going to be to Mr. Matthew Black, Project Coordinator, World Green Building Council, Advancing Net Zero Project. So since we heard that the World Green Building Council is working very closely with overall 70 GBC countries, and you're working with 30 countries, you said specifically on the net zero, each of these having their own vision and how does the World GBC take all these GBCs into consensus format? Or do you have some basis on which you want to put it across as a model for adoption or adaptation for each of the countries? Or how would you like to take them is my first question for advancing net zero. Based on the first response to that, with the experience to net zero, what according to you are the key enablers and the challenges that you think each countries might face? You must have done a little amount of work. So maybe if you can take for 2 minutes for the first question, 2 minutes for the second, that'll be good.
Absolutely. Thank you, Suresh, and thank you for the questions.
Yeah.
I think on the first part about, how do we get consensus with GBCs, it's really important. Before we launch a global project like Advancing Net Zero, We obviously conduct a significant amount of research and consultation, not only with the GBC network, but beyond with other NGO organizations and industry organizations to understand what's already out there, what research and learnings have other organizations done. So we're not copying people's homework or redoubling efforts. And really, we put that together to understand what can we bring to the table? You know, what does this global program look like that will help the GBC network to advance their efforts? Because really, that's what the main goal of World GBC is to do, is to assist and help the GBC network to pursue their work streams. And specifically in terms of advancing net zero, you know, how do we keep this going? How do we learn from each other? Well, you know, we have regular meetings every 6 weeks where we come together and we collaborate, we knowledge share. And this is crucial because by coming together and telling each other what we've been working on, what our work streams are achieving, we can help each other. So, you know, I think a key example of this is when maybe a younger green building council, an emerging green building council is looking to see how do they apply net zero to their local context, because that's important. Net zero is a different thing in India. Yvonne mentioned it's different in Singapore, it's different in Germany, it's different in the UK. And so everyone has to approach it in their own way. And really that knowledge share is where the GBC network comes into its own again, because if an emerging GBC wants to set up a certification tool, they don't have to start from the beginning. They can learn from our other organizations, from other GBCs who have gone through this journey, collaborate together and come out with a better result at the end of it, saving some work, saving some time, and ultimately having a better product. So really, that's just one way in terms of the certification schemes. I think beyond that, we're constantly working together, whether it's on reports, whether it's on conferences. And really, I just want to say again, it's that collaboration, which is vital.
Would it be a broad framework with a little amount of changes they can do? One. The second one, now you're doing specifically 30 countries, you said indicated. What do you think have been the enablers and the challenges so far faced with your experience now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in terms of enablers, again, I'm going to say collaboration. You know, this time, whether or not it's between World GBC and the GBC network, this time it's in terms of how are the stakeholders throughout the built environment collaborating. You know, we're not going to get anywhere if a developer is working by themselves to achieve net zero. They need to work with their designers, their contractors, their material manufacturers. It needs to be a cumulative effort from all stakeholders to advance these ideas. I think another barrier, but also an enabler, if it's done right, is finance. You know, we need good financing options for people to be able to innovate and pursue these ideas.
Very important.
But if it's not available, then it can be a barrier also. And then finally, I would say, in relation to mainstream adoption, because often when we talk about net zero, you know, we're talking about leaders, we're talking about individual examples, and really we want to get to this point where net zero is mainstream, where, you know, everyone is pursuing this. And I think one of the key enablers for this will be the adoption of sort of significant government policy, whether it's at a local level, all the way down to, you know, your local council or your local town, all the way up to the national government. We need the policy and regulation to support people in this journey.
Thank you so much. I think that is a good amount of information to everybody. Right time for me to switch on to Dr. Christine Lemaitre, CEO of the German Green Building Council, DGNB. Germany is a fantastic country where the major initiative energy took place over there, but the cost of energy itself is as good as the cost of rental space. Therefore, you brought in a phenomenal amount of thing under the earlier Chancellor's initiative. And technological advancement, availability and affordability of technology are very vital in advancing net zero movement. What has been DGNB's role in facilitating newer and better technology for each one of these aspects of the achieving net zero? Would you like to open out a little on that, Christine? First question, second question I'll ask after the reply to make it easier. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think for us, the big challenge is, in Germany, we tend to be very thorough with whatever we do. So we're very exact. On the other side, a building is more than, adding all the components and some technologies together. Oh. So I'm kind of connecting a little bit to what Jeff said earlier, and this is part of our work, is really this bottom-up part and really taking people by the hand to understand, what kind of technology, what kind of innovation really makes sense. And, because just technology is not going to heal the problem. We need good buildings, we need good architecture, we need to have this interdisciplinary integrated design approach.
Absolutely.
And this is a big part of what we do. We're really like bottom up. We're really trying, to listen. I think this is a very big part. We have now more than 1,500 member organizations from the whole value chain. So from single architectural firms all the way to the German automotive industry. They're even now starting to look into their buildings in a different way and using the DGNB system. And we launched 3 years ago an initiative for architects, a year ago for cities and municipalities.
Okay.
And we really try to educate them, because I think a key part is, I said earlier, the knowledge is there, but the problem is we have already so much knowledge available that it is sometimes very, very difficult for the decision makers or for the people who actually have to do the work, working in a municipality, to get the right access to knowledge and what kind of technology is out there. And this is a big part of what we do, is
Christine,
trying to help them.
Sorry, Christine, I asked for two things. One is availability. You said a lot of it. You have too much of that. Affordability at all level. You all can't take all the technology. Therefore, are there some inputs from your side to make technology accessible and available to all parts of the community? Are there some specific schemes for that?
Well, I would say we try affordability. I'm not sure. This is maybe a very European perspective, but in Europe, we now have the problem that the interest rates are very, very low. So if you talk to banks, they always say money has never been as cheap as it is now. So I think it is not the question that things are not affordable. It is more, making understand that this return of invest, where people always, when you talk about certain technologies, when it's about sustainabilities, the return of invest has to happen tomorrow. But with other things, people are much more long-term. And I think this is what we have to get across, that sustainability is not a quick fix, but it's, you have to think about it. But then I think affordability most of the time is not the key question.
Not a major, But your point is well taken. Those countries which are having high interest rates will have a problem. I'm sure I got this question, I'm going to ask somebody else, but I'm sure. Thank you very much. The second question is, are there any specific areas the DGNB is working on for the carbon neutral buildings for, let's say, 2021 to 2025? You said 2045. What type of things play in face the approach you're going to? You said new buildings are going to be the one, then later on existing building. You said that at the beginning. Would you like to say a little more of the Green Building Councils of Germany, DGNB's framework for action?
Yeah, so we basically, we offer this stepwise approach. So what we try to bring across to the industry is that you basically need a climate protection plan for every building. That means you have to monitor where you are, you have to identify what are the right measures, and then they have to make sense in an economic way, but as well put them on the time frame and really get it in as a management tool, as something where you really do monitoring, you evaluate the measures, and then you go the next step, or you reevaluate, and to make people understand, especially the industry, that it's not a one-off. Even if we build a carbon neutral building today, if we don't maintain it well, we have a lot of changes in terms of the energy providers. We see more and more renewable energy in the grid. So the carbon neutral building of today is not the carbon neutral building in 5 years if we don't keep on working and optimize. So this optimization part and having a pathway is a key of our work and what we try to bring across.
One related question. Is the German standards body DIN also working very closely to gear up to the same space that you want the change, or because that's very important? You said you're more exact. So Germans, so in terms of standards required are very, very important. Are the standards making body are also gearing up at the same speed at which you want the industry to transform, including on the ISO standards also?
Yeah, they're trying to, but as you might know, to develop a standard, especially an industry standard, always takes time.
Yeah.
So they're picking up on that, but we're always much quicker and much more dynamic as an organization. But they are now starting to come up with regulation in that sense too.
Thank you so much, Christine, for the good one. Let me turn on to UNSO, the great country where Singapore, where the net zero carbon of policy interventions of a very large nature. If Singapore has succeeded in all this effort on greening and bringing down the heat island effect, all that is because of the enormous policy interventions. It's a country where the whole country within a green environment. Okay, I would like to know how important the policy interventions at the highest level. A brief mention was made by Christine also to do not only at the federal level, but also at the local level to be done, which was also mentioned by Matthew. So would you like to open out on Singapore government's own policy interventions to the whole industry, to the building plan approval agency, etc.? Are there some clearly demarcated one towards the net zero goal?
Yeah. So there's no federal and local here. Everything is just one Singapore. We're really small. But definitely policy interventions are really, really important. I think we're quite famous for that. And the reason is because it levels the playing field. It speeds things up. It gives assurance, for your investments. So we do have a target to green 80% of our buildings by 2030. And
80%? 80%?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
That's quite substantial.
Yes, yes.
By 2030.
This target was actually set back in 2009. And as of the end of 2020, I think we have achieved about 43% greening rate. And much of it, and much of it, like you said, is because of legislation. And in fact, this year, a lot of the green building standards have been revised, and it's been revised upwards. So, the new standards came into play just this month. So what was once a platinum building in November is today the new base standard from December onwards. So, policy interventions are definitely one way in which we are trying to move things forward in Singapore.
Are you making it a mandatory requirement, and without that, no building plan will be approved? Or is it that you're taking them together in their own voluntary way? Or is it done not recommendatory, but in a mandatory way you're doing that? Or how is it?
Okay, so it's mandatory. So for new buildings, all buildings above a certain size, I think today is like 5,000 square meters, you have to meet a certain minimum required level. In the past, it was to a certified level, of a green building standard. And then we also have the voluntary standard, which is the green mark standard. Those are for the buildings that want to go higher. But today, the minimum, in December, the minimum standard has been raised to what was used to be the platinum. And of course, the platinum has moved on upwards. Yeah.
Okay. You're scaling it up.
Yeah, and we have legislation.
Raising the bar. You're raising the bar at regular intervals. Not shifting goalposts, but raising the bar to achieve that. Good. But 80% is a phenomenal thing by 2030 if I achieve that. Tell me, you're in the Asia Pacific region network. We have a network also available. Singapore as a model. Do you think all the countries in the Asia Pacific region can do that? Or like what you did? Or is it possible to replicate that in all our neighboring countries, including India, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, Hong Kong, etc., etc.? What you are doing, you think it can be done, or with a little discipline?
I think every country will have its own challenges. I mean, one good thing going for us is, we are quite centralized. Our buildings, tend to be kind of similar. Like 80% of our residential are what we call public housing. So, it's, I guess the problem is a little bit easier to deal with. Yeah. I think I take your point. Yeah, it's, the government agencies work very well together. So there's this thing called the whole of government approach. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much. Very good. I'm glad you said that balancing is required. It's not so easy as you're done where we had a very good governance mechanism, and it's a city-state country, and all of them are predominantly done by the public sector. So you could be able to do that, but may not be possible in others where different type of governance mechanisms. Thank you so much. Jeff, I would like to, being the head of collaboration membership Green Building Australia, all this will be a lot of money. I think Christine also mentioned about that. 90% of the world economies are now pledged to the world net zero, and trillions of dollars will be required for the COP commitments required. In this context, I want to check out how the financial institutions can facilitate investments for sustainable development in the building sector and contribute to meet, or are there some green financing or climate financing or something of that nature? Is something happening in Australia? Because Christine has already given a lead towards that. She talked on one aspect, the interest rates. So would you like to indicate something on this? It can even be large support from big countries also. You heard about what type of requirement was raised by other countries on funding required. Would you like to open out on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's quite an interesting one. This is obviously very important. And at the moment in Australia, there's a lot of interest from the financial institutions to say, how can we get involved in this? If I was working for a bank or some investment house and I was looking at how I can get involved with this, I think off the back of Glasgow, there was a lot of excitement and a lot of continued interest. And there's this line in the sand that says by 2030, we have a lot of work to do. I would be looking at not just financing net zero buildings, but looking at the inputs that go into buildings. So for example, we've changed the Green Star rating system to say you need to have reductions in your embodied carbon inputs. So the materials, you need to reduce that. And over time, between now and 2030, we're going to increase those requirements higher. And what that does is it sends a signal to our product manufacturers like steel and concrete and cement and everyone else that they're going to have to reduce the embodied carbon. And that's going to cost money and it's going to take investment.
Very big challenge. So that's a very big challenge.
It's a huge challenge, but the really encouraging thing is that a lot of our product manufacturer members have said, actually, this is great. We know this needs to happen. This is the kick in the backside for us to go to our board, to go to our leadership and say, we need to do this. We need to invest in this. Now let's look at what the options are. And Christina's absolutely right. Money is very cheap. So at the moment you can, look around and find, options and opportunities everywhere. But going to Yvonne's problem that Singapore has, I think quite an interesting one. And it shows, I suppose, the opportunity to think really big. There is a company called Sun Cable that is, there's a fellow named Michael Cannon-Brooks, who is kind of like a Australia's version of, what's his name from Tesla, Elon Musk. A young guy, very charismatic. He's financially very wealthy and he's got his own company, but he's literally set up this other side company to say, Singapore has got a problem with the amount of energy they need. They don't have enough space for renewables, like Yvonne has pointed out. What if we put a cable from the northern part of Australia all the way up to Singapore and
under the sea,
under the sea, and we'll do it all clean solar. So there's a plan by 2027 to have 15% of all of Singapore's electricity needs to be done through this program called Sun Cable.
You heard that? You must be very happy hearing that. You won't.
It's going to go straight to her house, the first place to get picked up. So
they're going to be our saviors.
Excellent.
So programs like that and projects like that, really big thinking, a huge opportunity, and that demands finance to come in there and help sort that out.
Very right. I wanted to know whether any major status on green financing in Australia, like green bond or climate bonds or green loans, or getting tax incentive for people who want to invest into such type of financial products and all that. Are there some initiatives? I heard Australia is giving a little leadership there. Would you like to open out a little on that?
Yeah, so green bonds have been around for a little while. I think the first one was done back in 2014 with Stockland, who's a big property developer here.
Yeah, 7 years back.
And this was back in 2014, so 7 years ago. It was oversubscribed. They actually went to the European market and they raised 300 million euros in a blink of an eye. So that went really well. There's been a lot of different green bonds successfully raised since then. But again, similar, I think the excitement and the interest, how we get to net zero, it's going to open up the market even bigger. But I think the potential blind spot or the challenge is the potential for greenwashing, and a lot of people saying, okay, I've got a bunch of money, can I get a bunch of green money? And then it's, how do you actually demonstrate where it's going to go? So we've been working with the Climate Bonds Initiative, the CBI, and it's effectively a framework.
That's what CBI, okay. Climate Bond Initiative.
Yeah. Okay. And that's really important because it effectively verifies that the bond is going to green initiatives. And we've worked with them and we've worked with Green Star. They've got a very rigorous standard for this, but we've got two of the rating tools within Green Star, the buildings tool.
You give tax breaks to the investors for that? Tax breaks? Any investment, no tax to be paid for such investment.
You're testing the limits of my knowledge around the green bond market, the specific details. I don't know for sure, but there's definitely an interest in this. And I think certainly from the investment point of view, saying, great, we're getting more and more questions from the superannuation and pension funds saying, how is my investment going into
long-term funds like pension funds and provident fund can come in over there. Okay. Pension funds, provident fund, insurance fund. Insurance in Germany and pension fund in provident fund in Singapore and your country, and your insurance in Europe and pension funds in US. So long-term money available can also be put over. That's a good, very good point.
Well, that's right, and you're right.
Yeah, would you like to add something more? I think it's fine. I think your CBI is a very important one. In India, that means Central Bureau of Investigation, but I now find that's a climate bond initiative. It means a positive one. Thank you so much. Ashish, I would like to turn on. For the Indian context, I was so happy to hear between all that, the issues which are policy, there's something which is technological, which Germany talked of that particular thing, and financial also, which talked of that. Regulatory also touched on that. So among all these barriers between the policy, technology, financial and others, do you think for wider adoption of this particular thing, what are the things that you think we should do in India to overcome that? Each one of them has to be addressed, or if some major things happen, others will automatically fall through. What would be your roadmap for that?
So, Mr. Chairman, I think what you put, it's a very vast question. You know that itself can take about an hour or so talk. But let me put it very concisely there. No, we do have our challenges. First challenge is that we are constructing at a furious pace the urbanization that is taking place. On second is the scale of the country. The country is very large.
Scale, subcontinental.
And then we have a federal and a state structure where incorporating a central laws is not very easy, that we have seen previously.
Yes.
Which actually brings us to the biggest challenge that we have. The second biggest challenge that we have is when we move to the carbon footprint reduction, you know, on energy front is easy to do things, on water fronts is easy to do things because that's self-driven. But when it comes to materials, there is a research required. There is a work needs to be done in terms of finding out how do the labeling of the materials to be done.
Yes.
Now that's where we in India, we do not have a very strong research culture because our education institutions are not built around it. And that's where a challenge would also be there. I don't see finance and the technology being a challenge because we have seen in past that anything which is makes sense to the Indian entrepreneurs is being adapted very well. In fact, the technology adaptation is one of the fastest in India. And then we also get technology from all over the world. It keeps, it's a very small world now. So I think that's where our challenges will lie. And that's where the Green Building Council, IGBC, or other like-minded societies like we have in India, ISHRAE, ASHRAE, and others, would play a key role in assisting the government in terms of coming out with suggesting the norms, with suggesting policies that could be done, helping them to implement faster, and also help in the capacity building that needs to take place along with that.
Would you, same question which I asked to Singapore, I would like to ask you with you on. You think some amount of mandatory requirement is also in India, things don't change as fast as you want, like other developed countries do it. Do you think we require some regulatory, you've got to get it done, without that nothing will move? Something like, you think some amount of stick is needed, because the carrot you gave out the incentives, some stick is also needed?
So, Mr. Chairman, also the stick has never worked in India. The Indians are very good of finding a way around the stick. And
around the stick, how to break the stick.
That has been a very clear indication in last 2.5 decades of development.
Christine also agreed, standards are not easy. She said that.
So
okay,
it's better to go on an incentive mode, which is what happened in the green.
Okay, incentive mode is better.
The moment we came to the incentives, you know, that the adaptation that has taken place has just gone up exponentially. So I think we need to find that way around.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what my suggestion would be.
Wonderful. I got one more question to you. You're a great ambassador. Don't put all your basket in the new building alone, which is easier to do it. You said that will be 100% will be done for all new things going to come. You've been one strong for retrofits for existing buildings also to completely transform, which Christine talked into the operational building, what do we deal, perform, and all that. Share your thoughts on how major retrofits, efficiency, and automation would contribute to carbon emission, because that's also an important building block there, which is consuming energy in large way. Would you like to give some ideas on that?
Chairman, I already spoke about in the beginning when I said that we have a very large aging building population.
Aging buildings.
2 decades of a huge construction movement that we have had. We now have the buildings which are ready to upgrade.
Yes.
Now, what is also happening is that as the codes are now changing, when we are talking about the zero carbon, net zero energy, net zero water, these are all performance based.
Yes.
Nothing is designed. It's not like so far our 2 decades, what we spoke about is energy efficiency, water efficiency, equipment efficiency. We kept speaking on at the individual level. I think now is the time for performance level. I see that as a major area which will change in next decade, which these existing buildings will be looking at. IoT, AI, all of that is becoming a reality. India has a large software development capability, population. So I think that is what is coming. And one area where a lot of work needs to be done and a training and upgrade needs to be done is the operation and maintenance practices. Because when we move to performance-based buildings or move to operation-based buildings, that's where the operation and maintenance plays a very, very important role, which not only in India, world over is a neglected area. We have always found the deficiencies in that area. So I think that's where our focus would be in general.
Could we use something what you do for the automobiles want to have the less pollution, and over the last few years, the latest model based on European one to have, can we bring, you said aging building, 50 years, 100 years, if they are going to be downright inefficient for energy, can we bring in that beyond? Unless you do that, we will not we can declare that as unsafe or will not. Some type of action is needed for such buildings, no? Otherwise, how will you get into it if they don't want to come?
I think we still need to keep in mind that our new building stock is going to be much, much, much larger going ahead as compared to what we have currently.
Yeah.
So let's, and then India is a fast growing country where we do have challenges with our own, the levels of incomes which are there. I think just coming down the stick is not an answer. A hand holding is the answer. Nudging, incentives are the answers.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. I think we have such an amount of diverse input which has come on all these issues, be it on the policy issue or regulatory issue or the technology adoption issue, etc., from each of you speakers. Right time for us to hear, who is unfortunately could not participate in this program, is Gary Chan's one. Could I request Anand to kindly play what Chairman of the Asia Pacific region for the Green Building Council, is the Executive Director of Hong Kong Green Building Council, has to say to us?
Yes, sir. So, as our session moderator mentioned, Gary Chan couldn't join, and he is an Executive Director at Hong Kong Green Building Council, and he is also the Chairman for the Asia Pacific Network of the World GBC. And he has a rich experience in heading the Hong Kong Green Building Council since 2016, as well as he is a great engineer and a great friend of all of us in the World GBC across the globe. So now we will listen to the recorded message from Gary Chan on the net zero buildings and environment.
Yeah, it'd be nice to hear.
Thank you, Federation of Indian Industry, for giving me the opportunity.
You can raise the volume a little, Anand.
Net zero and partnership.
Partnership
is very powerful in that it may create synergies. That is, 1 + 1 can give you more than 2.
Is it audible to everybody?
Since the revolution, we are seeing tremendous advancements in technologies,
productivity,
quality of life, health and well-being, and economic growth, etc. If you think carefully, these achievements will not be made possible without all the very extensive, efficient, complicated network of partnerships that are formed naturally, driven by various drivers throughout the past century. For example, we see banks being business partners of manufacturers, providing them cash flows to expand the scale of their production. Logistic companies and retailers to distribute their products to the consumers all over the world. We have also got the media to distribute product information to their targeted segment to drive up the demand. These partnering systems can very efficiently and effectively scaling up productions for the market and eventually driving up the economy. But we can see the side effects now. Most of these partnerships are also causing devastating effects to our environment, like pollutions, depletion of natural resources, and also now climate change, which is threatening the survival of human beings. We see the CO2 contents within the hemisphere increasing exponentially in the past 100 years. To reverse the situation, we have to, like how we have created it, partner with others to make it right again. No one single organization, country can win this battle on climate change on its own. We need to form partnerships that is as efficient and effective as the business sectors in scaling up their business. We need to have shared value and the right drivers. We need to establish the complicated value chains, but this time the value to them may not be just money or profits. You may say that there are already a lot of partnerships happening now to combat climate change. Like what I have been doing in the past few days is to partner with banks to promote green mortgage. But so far, these partnerships are relatively fragmented. And as you can see, the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is still increasing dramatically. The building sector is a big contributor on carbon emission. In Hong Kong, it is about 60%. And within the building sector, decarbonizing existing building is the biggest challenge. Actually, we have already got enough solutions and technology providers for the industry to advance to net zero. But the adoption rate of these solutions are still very low. For existing buildings, the focus should be to mainstream those readily available technologies and best practices.
Yeah.
What Hong Kong Green Building Council is planning to do is to partner with developers, technology providers, and bankers. We can use developers' buildings as a living laboratory to test out technologies, do measurements and verifications, and share those with the industry. We can arrange for competitions and awards for retrofitting projects to enhance buildings' energy efficiency. With this, it can help the providers to promote their products or technologies. This kind of partnership is a win-win for all parties. We are now working on a few initiatives. The developers are happy about it as they will be regarded as a leader leading the change. Something to put to their ESG report. They have a chance to know better the technology at a reduced cost and with good support from the supplier. Technology providers can demonstrate the technology with a real building and get third-party verification and promotion. We are also developing a target setting and certification scheme, and the banks are talking to us to provide green finance for the initiatives that the developers are adopting if they are using it to achieve their carbon reduction targets. This is an example of partnering with a number of parties to achieve the ultimate aim of advancing net zero, and each will gain something out of it. In closing, I hope that we will not just try to do our own part, because that is not enough to solve our climate crisis, but see how we can create synergies so that we can see an exponential drop in the CO2 content in our atmosphere. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary Chan, for the very useful inputs. If I got the major ideas, a little lower value, but later on I got it. He brought in the interesting of partnership, and we are all there in this program as CII Partnership even there. Partnership is leading to leadership of a very large way. And I think that's a good point, which of course, many have said are working together on sharing of the experiences, best practices that you have. And that's an important thing of partnership related message that is brought in over there. He also brought it to take it to a specific thing to professionals like architects and engineers, something for the developers to be done, something for the technology providers to be done. And he also thought competitions to be brought in over there to get the best of ideas in this particular thing, bring best possible initiatives, encourage to get the best possible ideas from practicing people, not only from within the country, but also from abroad. So it'll also be a good, like what a lighthouse projects to show what needs to be done. He also talked towards the end, the banks for the financing direction to be done in that area. If I got all the points that he said over, these are the broad ones. So, ladies and gentlemen, right time for me to get on to some of the areas of questions, which of course will be with all the panelists. I would like to ask this question. One which is emerging out on the screen, which I find over there, is on the, are there well-established sustainable finance structures focused for the real estate and construction and including infrastructure development in the financial market? That's a very generic question. Very briefly, you had some answers coming from Jeff. I found Jeff also has given some useful input which is coming on the CBI or the climate bond initiative. So I will raise this question to everybody in your own countries on specifically, and Christine also raised about finance issues over there. I would request to ask either in UK or in Germany or in Australia or in Singapore or in India, any issues on bringing more money, over $100 billion is the type of requirement that's needed in the sector. How do you bring in that particularly besides national governments giving it, from financial institutions coming, new products to be generated? I'm opening out maybe a minute or two, each one can reply depending on that. I find Christine has raised a hand on that. And since I find already Jeff Ortman has given a response on the chat box here, after Christine, I'll ask Jeff to put in. Christine, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think on this finance topic, you know, we see right now a big movement. I don't know if that's in Europe. We just launched the so-called taxonomy. So basically, part of the Paris Agreement, paragraph 8, is the topic of sustainable finance. That the money is going to be directed into measures to prevent climate change or deal with its effect. And so the European Commission has developed so-called taxonomy criteria, which are supposed to help banks and finance institutions as well as pension funds to understand, is a product sustainable or not? And one of the products being looked at are buildings. So we now have these taxonomy criteria for buildings which come into the market now, which generates a big movement and big excitement. And some are very, very concerned. What does it do to my building? So I think we now see, I mean, I've been with the DGNB for more than 10 years. And when I started, I always heard, you know, oh, if the finance world would, you know, kind of award us for all the things we would do around sustainability, then we would all do it. Now the point is there that the finance world is asking, and they're just asking very simple questions. Is your product in line with the taxonomy? Is your product or your building in line with the Paris Agreement? And now there's a lot of excitement and even panic in parts of the market because they've just waited and now they have to get going. So I think from a European perspective, we see now a big push, a big movement that a lot of money is being directed into sustainable products. And so I think that will be taking more.
What is the magnet to get money into it? What's the magnet to?
So basically, they're using it as a rating. So, you know, a bank, we're working already with several banks who have internal rating schemes in order to evaluate, will we finance a project, yes or no? And they want to see that the project is sustainable. Yeah. So it becomes a key decision-making mechanism to buy buildings, to invest into buildings, that the investors, the finance institutions want to see if it's a sustainable building, yes or not. So there's a big drive towards making it the new normal, as we call it, which I think is the right way.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. I'm going to ask, because he already come on the chat box, Jeff Ortman has got some very interesting scheme on how the climate bond initiative is talked in terms of climate bond standard and certification scheme and a policy engagement. Would you like to open out in your own way, sir? Because I read it. I don't know others have read it or not. Please go ahead.
Sure. Actually, there was another thing, just building off of what Christine had mentioned. You're thinking about the magnets for finance. I had another one I wanted to add, if it's okay, around GRESB. I don't think we've mentioned GRESB, the Global Real Estate Sustainability Benchmark. Yeah. And that is, that's been a real driver. And we've had a lot of our really big property owner members who have said, we have investors coming from around the world. And, you know, 8-9 years ago, they would come and they would say, tell us about the returns. How much money are we making? How much more are you charging the tenants? We want to know about that. And the conversation has shifted significantly to say, what are we doing around sustainability for our properties? And the conversation has now almost completely pivoted where that's the majority of the conversation. And a big driver behind this is the GRESB rating system and making sure that you can be attractive. And the way GRESB is basically a survey that looks at different property funds and helps you measure how sustainable your property assets are. So as part of that, it's a real driver for different property owners to say, we need to increase the performance of our property because we know we can attract money, more money that's looking to invest in this. So that's certainly a driver as well, and that's across the globe. So we've seen a huge push with that as well.
You mentioned about climate bond standard and certification scheme on your chat box. Would you like to open out in a minute? You can take on that. What is this climate bond standard and certification scheme?
Yeah, sure. So the way climate bonds is set up, it's basically you or I could set up we could call it a green bond. And in fact, back in 2014, when the first climate bond in Australia was done, it was commented by someone locally in the market. Anyone could create a green bond. They could raise finance and say, that's a green bond. And say, well, why? Well, I put one solar panel on the building and I raised, $500 million, and say, well, hang on a second, that's not really green. What the Climate Bonds Initiative likes to say, or the purpose of that is to set up and say, let's put a framework in place that we can actually measure what is truly sustainable. So if you say, I'm just going to, invest in, one solar panel, they'll take a look at this and say, hang on a second, this is not money well spent. We want to see very detailed. So they basically go through a framework of assessing that and making sure the money's being spent. So when an investor comes along and says, I want to put money in this green bond, how do I know that it's actually going to get us something meaningful? That's the intention of that. And there's a whole bunch of information on the website about that.
I think it's a very useful input. We'll build on it. Thank you. So anybody else would like to add on in this particular one, either from Matthew or Yuan or Ashish on this larger issue before I ask the next question?
Yep. If I may add.
Go ahead, Yuan.
Other than green finance, I think there's also the emergence of transition finance, because we need to recognize also that it's not so easy for a lot of companies and their products to be like green, overnight. So there are, I think, similar efforts in Singapore and ASEAN to establish some of these taxonomy framework to make sure that we are encouraging the right actions and putting the money, to support companies' efforts to going green. Just a very short comment on that.
So I like the word transition finance. That's the word you said? Okay, very interesting concept. You can't go full hog from 0 to 100 in one shot. You got to go through a phase approach. How do you go that particular? Interesting, very interesting product. Matthew, you want to add something with your 30 countries experience? Anything on that? Is Matthew there?
I don't think so. I don't think I've got much to add. I think Jeff did an excellent explanation there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Ashish, you talked of reaching out to 100 industries or something under CII. So I would like to ask, how can we reach out to industries, which is also, Gary Chan also talked in terms of not only builders and professionals, but also technology providers and all the industry groups also have to come into it in a big way, materials and all that, which Australia also mentioned on that. Would you like to open out on that? How do you really help them out into all the industries also to get into the green component, net zero? Ashish?
I think Chairman, thank you. So I think the main thing is education. When we, we now are speaking about, last about 2 years, we're speaking about the net zero concepts, and the reaction of the industry has been very, very positive. In fact, many of them, if you look at the program which the net zero has been rocked in India by the number of registrations that we have and the certifications that we have, given the complexity of the building, it still talks about the interest in the subject. So from that perspective, it's very much there. Interestingly, I also came across cases here in India where the developers, which are supposed to be the last ones to adopt anything which becomes difficult, are now coming forward and saying that, would you please tell us how to go look at the look at the net zero initiatives. Simple thing, the request for proposals that they're getting for their own building, filling up the buildings, are saying that give your carbon footprint reduction, declare your carbon footprint reduction program. So the prospective tenants have also started.
Encourage that. You said two things, not only the tenant also you said.
Correct.
I was just looking at the watch. We are at 15:43, 2 minutes, we should close. I thought, I got the idea. You brought in the new one, developers, not only producing the space, including the one using the space also, get the feedback from all. I liked it very much on that. Well, actually, we are going to close. Maybe if anybody would like to make a last minute, not more than 30 seconds, brief in the way forward. One single sentence, or what is the best way to go to net zero? One sentence. Starting with Matthew.
I can do one. I would say collaboration and set targets through some kind of initiative, hopefully the Net Zero Carbon Buildings Initiative.
Collaboration, set targets. Wonderful. Christine?
Get started. Stop reinventing the wheel, even if it's new for you, maybe, but it's not new for the world. So do your research, come to us, Green Building Councils, and just get started and don't overcomplicate things.
So get started is a strong word. Okay, wonderful, Christine. Coming down to Yvonne, one sentence.
Okay. Yeah, so I would say continuing education, because we're living in an age where there's a lot of rapid technological changes and new concepts. We must not forget to, educate our professionals, all our industry professionals on that.
Professionals and industry. Okay, good. Jeff?
I would say work with your local GBC.
That's good. Work with local GBC. Good. Ashish?
I think, Chairman, it's about providing the benchmarks. Everybody wants a good building. If there is a benchmark available to see how you stand with respect to that, that itself starts driving down the consumption in the building. So give benchmarks which are not available today in our industry.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think this type of messages bring very much. You brought so much of a wealth onto this particular discussion in the last 75 minutes time period. And I'm so happy to go forward on this. All of us are on a learning curve here. Some have started a little earlier. Some are going to do it there. Good examples from different parts of the world. And get started and get cracking is a powerful message, not only on all the new buildings, clear-cut message, only the way to go there. And also to do it on the existing buildings, also to put a large amount of initiative to convert those particular things. Bring a lot of incentive-related schemes needed, but also policy, regulation, standards, as well as the type of financial issues coming. Financial new products that is to be utilized, not only for entirely new products for the new buildings and other one, plus even transition financing, a good product, including the Green Bond Initiative Australia has done. Accessing large amount of long-term funds like pension fund, Provident Fund, insurance, which are all money, 30, 40 year money, to bring those particular things into this area would be another major initiative. And as rightly told, the taxonomy base that is done, the EU example, would be a very good opportunity where all the EU countries are doing that. They're working on that. Excitement is there in the sector. I'm sure we put all the things together, awareness, appreciation, application, and having a clear-cut roadmap, which are, as many have said, 2030, something like 80%, something about 2045. I think it's going to be step-by-step approach. We're working on it. We are all started well. Some have started earlier there. I'm sure we'll achieve that particular goal of net zero for our buildings and the built environment. Thank you so much, all you wonderful panelists, for making it as much livelier and for enhancing everybody's knowledge base in a very large way. I got to be grateful for all the inputs. Raghupati, you want to add something?
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Wonderful session, Chairman. I would like to thank all the...
Because you are for the CII. I said partnership is leadership. Because very rightly, bro, everybody talks of working together. Yeah, we want to say a word or two, closing, from CII, who has organized the program?
Thank you, Mr. Suresh, for leading this session wonderfully. It was a great session, and you brought the best out of everybody. And Jeff, Christian, Yuan, Ashish, Matthews, it was a wonderful session. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, we took 2 minutes extra time. I would have liked to close exactly at 15:45, 2 minutes extra. It was worth it. I'm sure it only shows this is an opportunity to have a day session exclusively. And if you really want to open out on this particular minute, we got a mile-long, inch-deep approach. We require an inch-long, mile-deep approach. Mile-long, inch-deep is what we covered. We require an inch-long, mile-deep approach in each of them to go into specifics of that. I'm sure that can come. This is a good starting point. Thank you once again, all you brilliant panelists, to each one of you, Matthew Black, Dr. Christine Lemaitre, Ms. Yuan So, Jeff Wortman, as well as Ashish Rakeja, and of course, to our who could not participate here. I would like to thank him also.
Gary Chan.
Gary Chan's good inputs that has come over there, Chairman of the Asia Pacific. Thank you, Anand, for getting us all together. Thank you. Anand, incidentally, is the Vice Chairman for the Asia Pacific Network for the World Green Building Council representing India. He is the Vice Chair for that, where Gary Chan is the Chairman. Thank you, Anand.
Thank you. Thank you, friends. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, Christine. We'll get on taxonomy with you. Transition finance with you.
Please do.
I got something to go with each other. CBI, something on taxonomy issue, something on transition finance with you. Each one has brought so much pearls of wisdom onto the idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Time to leave.
Thank you.
Bye. 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 Bye, Christine.
Yeah.